These are the type of conversations that like this in depth that we just did right here is something that is a conversation that is really can only be had in like a space like this.
All right, let's talk Schoolboy Q. Shout out to actually one of my favorite artists from TDE. Can't wait to see what this brother's gonna drop. But he was doing an interview. He was talking about the frequency with which, or lack thereof, in terms of him putting out music. And I'm gonna read a couple quotes, see what you guys think, because this caught me off guard. Not necessarily from him, or from a standpoint of him actually talking about how he puts out music. He says, when it comes to music, I don't look at it as like, oh, you have to drop every year. I'm like, no, your favorite rapper has to drop every year because he needs chili. I do what I want because
he needs chili.
He said, I do what I want because I move off peace. I move off my experiences. And there's also something where he talks about what he draws from. He says I think he's talking about TD. We never looked at the industry as a sport. You know, like just trying to put up championships and win a ring and put an album out. He said, this is our life. Me talking about our situations, you know, the ish we done been through, homies we lost to the system or the streets. It's not a sport. Me talking about my mama's trauma from her own brother is, you can't compare that to somebody who just won a championship ring. So he's basically saying, he talks about his life. He talks about experiences. He has to go through things to come up with concepts to make records, if I was to paraphrase. I don't hear too many artists talk about this. I thought this was extremely dope. Why do you guys think artists don't talk this way as it relates to putting music out?
I think artists do talk this way.
I was about to say, I've heard artists.
You hear artists talk about reflection and experiences as it relates
the
to
artists I like.
a hiatus.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I don't think it's the mass. I don't think it would be. I don't hear it a lot.
I think we need to define what an artist is, and I've
That's
talked
fair.
about that before. Like, not everybody is an artist that makes music, in my opinion.
That's fair.
It's not about art. It's about product.
Exactly.
A lot of these people, they're rapping.
It's about approach too, though.
They're rapping to eat. Okay,
they want their chili.
Like
he said, I guess.
They're not rapping to give you their life experience or to tell you anything about themselves. Or actually, they're rapping because what they have and the music they make is a product. It's something they can put in commercials. Like we can make a Dunkin' Donuts commercial out of this song.
Yeah, we just did. You got me there.
You're not going to make a commercial out of anything that was on the last Kendrick album.
So would it be fair to say that the approach of most artists as it relates to music, it's mirrored in the product. Like what we see is what we get.
When you define artists, yes, to Lone's point, artists and actually putting out the music is totally different. I mean, throughout time, people that we define as artists have all taken this same approach. Even Raphael Sadiq's last album is about his brother's drug addiction.
Right.
The whole album, that's what it's about. He drew from that. Kendrick's album is about him going to therapy and his family and, opening up scars and stories that he probably never told anybody before.
Very deep.
I mean, it's a process of being an artist.
It's thought.
Yeah.
It's thought.
Marvin Gaye did the same thing.
Here, my dear.
Yes. Stevie Wonder. I mean, everybody that we consider artists approaches music the exact same way. It's not something they're just doing to get a YouTube clip or be popular on TikTok.
Let me play. First of all, I agree with what you said, but let me play devil's advocate here. Lone, I'm coming to you on this. What do you say to people that say, we talk about music being subjective, right? There are some people that may say the people that we're talking about, or the opposite of the people that we're talking about, are artists as well. It's just a different approach or a different way of thinking. They still could be categorized or listed as artists. You see what I'm saying? Like the opposite of what Terry's talking about. There might be people that might say, well, they're artists too. They record, they draw from XYZ.
Right. I'll go to my famous saying, people also eat their hair. It's yes. One of those things where, yes, to some degree, look, what we're doing here is we're having a very nuanced conversation about artistry, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, yes, you can, if you want to look at it from the big and encompass everybody that records a verse or blah, 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 and just call them an artist, then okay, then that's what we're talking about. But what we are specifically talking about right now is the very nuance of what we define artistry as, not what everybody just calls it. You know what I mean? It's the same thing as the difference between a beat maker and a music producer. Mm-hmm. Everybody calls beat makers, producers now, even if they've never been in the studio with somebody coaching somebody making music.
Good point.
Sure, we can all get on board with the fact of how terminology and stuff has changed, but when we have that, that micro nuanced conversation about what a music producer is versus a beat maker, or what an artist is versus just somebody who records songs and puts it out, or as a content maker, as Terry said, those are different conversations. You know what I mean? So yes, if you want to call them an artist, cool. In your definition, that's what they are. But for what we're specifically talking about right here, artistry is different. So that's the way that's how I would put it. And I'm not even trying to like take away from like those artists that I don't necessarily consider an artist. I know that's deemed as like a slight, because it kind of is a little bit, because we're talking about artistry. We're not talking about what's going to sell, what's going to work.
It's passion. I'm sure everybody in here had art class, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a handful of people that excelled in art class that could really draw and could be deemed as artists. All of us, well, some of us, I can draw a little bit, but I wouldn't say I'm an artist, so to speak. But we wouldn't fall into that artist pocket, and we all went to art class. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of,
it's the same
the
with
music
band.
business is the same thing.
It's like,
that's a good one.
We had to choose between band or art.
We had to choose between band, choir.
Yeah. So I'd never actually
or
had
orchestra.
I never had an art class, but band was that for me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And the
Right.
same way you're saying. And it goes across the board with everything. It's the same way with people that really love math.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or really into anything. It's like you have the people that are there on the surface. That's why I never call myself a DJ, even if I've DJ'd things, because I know good DJs.
Yeah.
That actually,
that kind of burns me up too, that people will just wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm a DJ, book me.
Yeah.
And you have no experience.
It's
and
like,
I'll be like, no.
Yeah.
I just don't like calling myself stuff that I don't find passion in, that I don't put a real amount of effort into doing, of what the core thing is. Not what sells, not what works, not what makes money, but like the core, like what it is. Like
The whole makeup of it.
Yeah. Like I do video stuff, but I know people that are really good at video stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're the professionals. I'm just somebody that hobbies and learns on the side, and I can do some stuff, some pretty good stuff, better than most people. But I know people that are really good at it. That's what they do. You know, they love it. You know, they love the creation and the development of all the stuff behind it that I don't really care as much about. That's why
technology.
I would consider myself more of a hobbyist at it as opposed to an actual artist in the video film.
Right.
And then there's no shame in that necessarily, unless you are really trying to balance that. I'm going to go back to the artist thing. If you really want to be called an artist, but you don't want to do the things that make you an artist.
Exactly.
Oh, that's it right there.
I don't know. So yes,
Like we discussed earlier about being a podcast.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of professionalism that goes with being somebody that's on a podcast and does it all the time.
Yep.
Versus somebody that just decided I want to make a podcast and can't keep up. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we can sit on here and we can
comparison
in Jay Moore's voice, we can shake ass if we want, right?
We can.
Or we can continue to do what we've continued to do for 356 episodes,
Right.
and slowly improve the process so that we're still ourselves, but at the same time we're doing things that make more sense to reach the same eyes that the people that do shake ass do. You know what I mean? So.
Because we're artists and we're sensitive about our ish.
Sure are. That's why I clap back on the comments.
Yeah.
Man. Y'all, that's some straightening right there. Those are great examples. Well said, gentlemen. Jay Moore, you got anything to add? Or
No, I mean, that's my whole thing. There are people out, like, just like Lone alluded to, there are people out there who shake ass and they'll get their brand deals, and that's fine.
Yep.
Because that's what they're here for.
Yep.
You know, but please don't confuse those people who are actually trying to create art that we'll talk about in the next 20 to 30 years. You know, there's some of you who will be like, oh yeah, remember that? That was a moment. And then there are artists where we have actual serious discussions about your art, and, you know, there'll be people's grandchildren talking about like this person did, and it won't be a joke. You know, some of you are really, you know, like I said, save your money. Yeah. Save your money, because, like, you know,
that's what you got in for.
You got into it for the money. So put that money away and do the right thing, because, you know, you're not a legacy artist.
Better hope your 15 minutes lasts at least a 30 to half hour to an hour or something.
The best you can hope for is in 20, 25 years, the nostalgia about your moment music will come back up, and then you can go back on tour.
We've seen it happen.
True indeed.
No, it happens.
That 15 minutes can turn into an hour, and it can turn into
it's 15 minutes, and then like, okay, you get another 15 minutes in 20 years.
But that doesn't miraculously all of a sudden be like, oh man, because he's here for 20 years later doing the same stuff and it's popular for the same reason. It doesn't mean that you miraculously become said artist.
Yeah, I mean, like they're like right now, there's somewhere where Vanilla Ice is still getting the tour.
Literally what I was going to say.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that his music all of a sudden became better and like history is going to smile upon it any better.
At this point, he's making a living. Like he has to do this to make a living.
It's just because it was so popular at one point. There's the New Kids on the Block are not going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Literally was the next thing I was going to say.
I'm sorry, they were very popular, and they're able to tour off nostalgia. But nobody's like, man, should the New Kids on? Let's
talk about them in the college.
That's not a discussion, about them going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It just isn't. For whatever you may feel about, because that nostalgia might be a part of your teenage life. But it's not something that's going to carry them into, the Hall of Fame, or there's not going to be a college course taught, in said music school about the New Kids on the Block. There just isn't.
Y'all got it.
How about that?
Sorry, we love Hammer, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Just because he was popular and, it's come back around, he's performing again every now and again. He's not a Hall of Famer. It just isn't like that.
These are the type of conversations that like this in depth that we just did right here is something that is a conversation that is really can only be had in like a space like this. Or like in person, like you see like online, banter back and forth about stuff like this. You can't define this stuff in this type of way
in a comment section or something like that.
You can't say like, oh, they're not an artist and be like, oh yeah, they are because, they're making money or something. It's just like, okay, I'm not going to write 9 paragraphs to explain this to you.
This is the perfect setup for it, to your point.
It's almost like this was the point of a podcast.
Hey man,
y'all did. I have nothing else.
What do you think about that?
About what everybody said?
You have anything additional?
Well, I tried to point out the devil's advocate point, but there are definitely levels. You broke that down. Terry broke that down, and Jay Moore broke that down. There's nothing else I can say, man. To me, it was just refreshing to hear someone speak like that in an interview, because I don't hear that too often in today's climate. So that's why it stood out for me. I thought it was dope for him to even talk about, me even mentioning his mom and the championship concept, and it's not just a one-off. I have to go through stuff to turn it into something. You just don't hear people talk like that too often as it relates to music, especially if somebody of that caliber. Schoolboy's pretty, he's pretty well-known artist. I think it's dope to hear people talk like that.
Yeah, he also in that interview alluded to how influential Kendrick was to him.
He did, yep.
And how about that as well. He said that Kendrick will always be a better man than I am. I mean, that's his personal opinion.
He knows him.
Yeah, he knows him personally. He said he's a better father to me. He's this, that, and other. The guy was like, well, you were a father first. He's like, I was a father pretty much because I was around Kendrick, and he's rubbing off on me, making me a better person. So I mean, it's pretty deep.
That's a great compliment.
That is.
Shouts to him. I agree. I appreciate those type of conversations that because I think I'm going to take this another step a little bit further, is because because you and I are artists, and we all know artists. We're all friends with them in that manner. All my artist friends think like what we're just talking about.
Yeah.
We're all on that same synchronicity. Like, shouts to Pete's sake, shouts to Kenny. Like, I don't know how many times he's literally said, I don't know, in person or just in general, like he has to recoup what he's writing about. Like if you don't have anything to write about, then what you're just going through the motions. You know what I mean? And that's all. I feel like we all go through that stage of like trying to balance like the content world and just drawing from some place of realness that makes sense. You know what I mean? Rather than just like putting stuff out, and it's a hard balance these days. And it's always been a hard balance, but it's even harder.
You actually make a very good point when you make the point of, you talk about our friends or just creatives in general, people that we know. That conversation does come up a lot, and you'll hear writer's block or producer block, or we've talked about when you go through that phase where you just creatively, your mind is warped or you can't come up with anything. You have to remove yourself, pull back a little bit. But the thing that comes with that is I have to find some inspiration. I have to pull it from somewhere. And I've heard a lot of rappers that I know, to your point, Pete's sake as an example, they have to come up, they have to pull away and just decompress and then find other stuff to talk about. It always sticks with me when we talk to Odyssey, how he talked about when he traveled.
Right.
I'll go sit at the park and just watch.
Yeah.
And I'll draw inspiration from stuff, and it might turn into a project.
Right.
That has always stuck with me since we got a time to sit with them, because it's the exact thing of what we're talking about.
Guess who does that?
Who's that?
Actual artists that draw and paint.
Man, that's it.
They go through different phases
That's it.
of their painting styles and their drawing styles and things of that nature. So it all relates.
Yeah, and also that's a lot of times why you see certain people hang around certain people. It's why certain people work with certain people. It's because there's this understanding of what that process is like, you know. And if you don't, it's easy to see, like, as an artist, it's easy for me to spot the artists that aren't like me.
Let me add,
You know what I mean?
I'm glad you said that. I want to pivot slightly. That's a good, what you just said is a good topic, a good comment as it relates to creatives and the types of creatives that you work with. The synergy that comes with that. How important is that to you from a creative standpoint, that you are 100% locked in with somebody that you're working with versus someone that might come from maybe a different genre or a different background, but you guys may have certain things in common? How important is the synergy part of that from a creative standpoint?
I think the commonality is the most important thing. This is one of the main reasons why I've never chased placements in my entire life, because I'm much personally, I mean, maybe early on I was kind of interested in it a little bit, but then I was just kind of like, no, I just enjoy the process of getting to know another artist and to develop something together with them, you know, and seeing what we can come up with. I'm much more interested in doing something like that than transactional related things, if that makes sense.
It does.
Just for who I am. And yeah, I don't know if I'm even answering your question, but
you are.
But it's, you know, that's kind of the way that I look at it. I just feel like the relationship aspect is important. It also makes it really hard sometimes for me as an artist, because I like to work in solitude. So I've had to pretty much kind of branch out of that. I did early on in my career in general, a lot, but in the last 10 years or so, I've been even more select. I've been even more low key. So it kind of hurts on the other side of it. You really have to find your people. Otherwise, you just don't end up working. You know what I mean? So it's like, or you just put out a lot of solo stuff. So
have any of you all been in, just opening it up, with relationships? Because in certain relationships, business, creatively, some people have an end goal and a thought process of money. And then there's other people that value the experience, and they may be thinking long term outside of what you're doing at the moment.
That kind of that kind of explains exactly what we've been talking about in the whole conversation.
Yeah,
about people who actually they're making a product, they're not making art.
I've dealt with both, and what Lone is talking about feels better.
Yeah,
the process feels better going that route, because if somebody is so pressed about, okay, we got to get it out, I need to get done, let's get it up so we can stream, and I can't. You know what I mean? That confuses me. Like, that frustrates me.
That's what Schoolboy Q was talking about with the chili.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need that pot of chili, so you're trying to hurry up and get it cooked.
And it's not just music. I mean, I could look at it, bringing down the band in the same sense. What me and Terry did, and shouts to Brendan, and shouts to David Peck, and shouts to everybody else that wrote.
Yep.
What we did was a labor of love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we wanted to curate a very specific type of thing, you know, and we did that. And were we chasing money? Sure, kind of. Did we ever reach it? No. And did it really matter? Yeah, kind of, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't going to falter what we were doing. You know what I mean?
Because we actually enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, you know.
Didn't you just say somebody thanked you for a playlist on Bringing Down the Band when you were at Trees?
Yeah, years ago. Yeah.
So, I mean, you never know who's paying attention.
Well, it loops back to what we talked about. We were talking about how people get into podcasts for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Like, they think, okay, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm immediately going to be sponsored by Coca-Cola and Mercedes-Benz, and like, no,
Right.
You know, and they think, okay, if I go ahead and, you know, shake a little ass, I can get these sponsorships up, and then then it may not really be what I feel. I may just get on here and say what I think is going to work, as opposed to, because we could completely change the format of this show and just get on here and just.
That'd be very easy.
Yeah, but
which is why it's always hilarious when people suggest that we do that.
Yeah,
because
that could be the.
Man, listen,
you can't get any further from the truth by making that assessment.
I've literally seen people, or someone in specifically that was trying to do a podcast and was like making posts like trying to get them in contact with all these famous people. It's like nobody knows who you are. Right. So what makes you think they're going to come and sit down with you? Hey, do you have such and such as information? I want to get in contact and see if they want to talk to me. For what?
Right. What have you built that would think that you deserve that?
Yeah. But this particular person is like that with everything that they do. They think they can just throw something at the wall and get these floodgates of people to come in and are going to provide all of this to them without actually doing the work.
And it can be flooded, but it'll be shallow.
Yeah.
Very.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
very
it's just
shallow.
like, I've seen podcasts, once they realized they weren't going to get these huge sponsorships and they weren't going to be able to retire off of podcast money, they don't even get to 10 episodes.
They don't even
get might not even get to 5. Yeah, it might not even
10.
get to 5.
I'm being very generous. Be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to be able to quit my job and just do podcasting. No, you're not. We all got to get up and go to somebody's work or do something other than what we do here. Any money we get from this, 356 episodes in, goes back into the podcast.
Right back into the podcast. So like we said earlier, anybody that wants to sign us to make this our career, I'm
have
all
that conversation. Have that conversation.
Y'all clearly paying attention.
Yeah, paying attention. So
I wonder Pat McAfee needs like a hip hop branch.
I'm telling you,
know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually know where his building is. We might need to go knock on his
We might need to run up on.
You want to just pull up?
We might have to just pull up, man. He might be for it.
Pat, we don't need. They not gonna give us what they giving you, man. But I'm just saying,
he getting an ESPN check right now.
Yeah,
he's not
he's
even
on First Take. Every Tuesday.
He's not with.
Oh, that's right. He left Barstool.
He's not with
he
Barstool.
been done with them.
He leveled up,
but he has his own network.
Yeah,
it's his
he
own
had his
network?
own. He had his own. He was like, I don't need that.
So
network.
Pat can cut that check.
He can. He can. Holla at us.
Pat, what's up,
we
man?
need to come holler at you?
Yeah. Do we need to run up on Pat McAfee?
We might have to.
Pat, hopefully we won't have to pull up, man. Let's just come on, man.
These are not threats.
Not at all.
They're not.
This is a non-violent podcast
for the Colts. We appreciate you. You're a pillar in the community.
Yeah, all of that.
family man. We appreciate you.
What do you say for the culture?
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that he always stands up in his podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact.
It's intense. It's like
I appreciate the fact that even though he's got that, he still wears like a tank top and a gold watch,
cut off T-shirt. He's very comfortable.
I
in
was
his
like,
podcast.
you know what? Some people are just very comfortable being their authentic selves. And
you know
so
what?
I can appreciate that about Pat McAfee.
And that's exactly why it works.
Yeah,
he's the total opposite of the button up.
Not the culture. I'm sorry, for the brand.
For the brand.
Yeah. Because for the culture, people can be wanting you to do stuff for free.
Yeah.
Pat ain't doing nothing for free.
and going forward, neither are we.
We do it for the brand, Pat.
Yeah, exactly.
For the brand. So Pat, man, we appreciate you, man. We
be to see you to
we be to see you.
sign the paperwork. Get it going. They say speaking into existence, right?
Hey,
yeah, hey, why not?
Hey, let me find out that we're in a Hulu documentary next week.
Man, I'm telling you, man, if it's 3 in a row, man, something got to change.
Now I'm going to just start watching anytime they do a hip hop documentary.
I feel like I need to watch.
We gonna show up the next place that streams us or puts us in something.
We pulling up.
Yeah, we pulling up at the office.
Pulling up, and we not saying it in a nice way like we said it to Pat McAfee.
Hey, we pulling up like Cube did.
We running up.
Some
We're
gonna
not
get
pulling up. We running up.
Yeah.
Some gonna get broken this next time we see something pop up.
Depends on who it is.
No,
you're right. I don't want to mess the bag up. Good
point. Like Denzel, I'm leaving with something. I'm from around the way.
Yeah.
I'm like, take this paper towel roll.
Get some staplers. I'm gonna get that microwave. You got the
we taking
embroidered towels.
Exactly.
100%. We taking the Keurig, all of that. We gonna get something.
Oh, you guys are frozen again, man. What's going on? What's going on?
What's happening?
Yeah,
What's going on
They don't
today?
want me and
What's
Terry to
happening?
win. What's happening?
Once we start making veiled threats against these corporations.
That might be the man telling us something on the low.
Yeah. Okay. Mess with y'all's internet.